So good afternoon, everybody. Hope you are all doing well. And I wanted to give you guys all a really big heads up of something that's going to be coming in May. The Jewish Experience, as you know, what it was like a month ago, we had our Cause Match fundraising campaign, which was really wonderful and successful and very exciting. And now we are embarking on something that has nothing to do with money at all. No money. It is in conjunction with the holiday of Shavuot, which is when we received the Torah. We are creating a program that is going to be like a fundraiser, but it's not a fundraiser. It's going to be a learning commitment of people to commit to a certain number of minutes over a 1 month period of time. And I think it's starting like in the middle of May, and it's going to end on June 13th. So that you might be able to figure out that that's an auspicious date because June is 6 and the 13th is 13. So it's like 613, which are the number of positive moments that we have. And we're going to be for men, women, children, families, across the board, wherever anybody is, of people having an opportunity let's see, hold on one second, sorry. Of everybody who is to participate, making a commitment to learn for, I don't know, 5 minutes a week, 1 minute a day, 60 minutes a week, whatever somebody wants to do. And our goal is to raise 600,000 minutes. The 600,000 is the number of souls that were present at Mount Sinai. So that number becomes a significant number for us. And so we're looking to have that be the number of minutes that we are trying to accumulate. On June 13th, our plan is to have a concert, an outdoor concert to celebrate everybody's accomplishments. You don't have to have participated in order to do that, but if you want to, you can. So we're in the process. So this is all getting ready to start in May. So why am I telling you about it now? Not that you can bank your time, but I have an offer to make to you. So first of all, we're going to have teams and do the whole thing like that. You can have a team be your family. You can join my team. You can make a team. You can have a buddy. If two people are learning together over the phone, even like 5 minutes, then you get double, counting it twice. So however you want to do it, reading to a child, something, and it can be very wide. This doesn't mean you'd sit down with a Torah scroll. This can be on any subject matter that is Jewish related, that is meaningful to you. We are going to be promoting the classes that we offer. Like this class, you could say that you're committing to 60 minutes a week from your Tuesday class, and that would be over 4 weeks. That would be a commitment of 240 minutes. So you could do that just by something. It doesn't have to be something new. It could be something that you're already doing. We just want to be focused and intentional about it. So since you guys are all an already existing group of people who are committed to learning and spending time, I just wanted to give you guys like a first heads up that this is going to be coming. In addition to that, I want to make available to people gifts from my library. Of my Jewish library. I have a number of books that I would like to give to people who would be interested in them to keep. You don't have to be, can it be studied with other organizations? Yes, it can be. It can be studied with other organizations as well. So if you're doing something with someone else, we just want to know what the minutes are. I'm not sure if they'll have something on there like what you're doing, just to know, just out of interest, but I'm not sure about that. We're just kind of in the beginning stages of it. So yes, other organizations, it could be on your own, it can be done with the person, it could be with somebody outside of the city. It doesn't have to be in Colorado, it can be anywhere. And you'd be surprised how quickly the minutes add up, which is really beautiful. And to think of us as doing something all together, since we tend to think of our activities as just being individual activities and not necessarily activities that are, contribute to a whole. So I just want to give you an idea of what I have in my library to give. And if you want if you're interested in any of them, to please email me and let me know. That would be great. I have like 10 books, so I'm just gonna give you a sense of what they are so you know. One is called Growing Each Day by Dr. Rabbi Abraham Tversky of blessed memory. These books, most of these books are less than a day's, like where you can learn something for like 1 minute, literally like while you're waiting for your coffee to heat up in the microwave type of thing. And it has, these are something like from the sages, from the scriptures, from the parsha, and it's broken up in a daily reading. You don't have to do it by the day, but it just gives you something bite-sized to do. So this one is called Growing Each Day. I have another one that is called, where is my other one? So that's that kind of one. There's another one I have, it's called, I love this one. It's called Let There Be Rain. It's about cultivating gratitude. And that is a wonderful, okay, Marla, okay, thank you. And if multiple people want something, we'll see if we can work it out, but I just wanted to make this available to you. This one is the Khofitskhyam. It's a lesson a day, definitely related to this week's parsha, because it's about the laws and proper speech and examples of what we say and what we don't say, judging people favorably, not taking revenge, all these things about speech, which is related to this week's parsha of Tazri and Mitzorah. Honestly, one of the reasons I'm giving this away is it's beautiful, but the print is too small for my eyes, which are now almost 65-year-old eyes, and I can't see it well enough, but maybe somebody who is younger could do it. Then I have another book that's called Seek Peace and Pursue It. And this is by Dr. David Lieberman. He is a kind of a world-known person, works in the Jewish and non-Jewish world, and has beautiful, beautiful ideas about how to create peace in relationships with very practical ideas. So this is just a sample of some of the things I have that, because not everybody has a library. Some people's libraries could use some refreshing, and maybe it's just something new to focus on. So I just wanted to put that out there for you. So let me know, and I'm going to put my email in the chat so that you can write it down. I think probably most people have it, but I'm going to type it in, and you can just let me know if you're interested in something, or if I went too quickly, which is very possible, you can give me a call and ask me about what's available. Okay, but I just wanted to do something to help facilitate this whole wonderful process of having intentional learning. There's also different learning about different topics. Like if you're interested in, for example, making Shiva calls, and you want to learn more about that, or about visiting the sick, or I have a book that's about how to handle wealth, tzedakah. Like there's so many things, interpersonal relationships. There's so many different things that somebody could study. So we'll be having a whole program of different topics and things online and available, and possibly in person. I'm not sure what's happening. Also, if anybody's interested in my book, that's, I asked Rabbi Liban, like, I don't know if this is totally self-serving. I said, can my book be one of the things I offer? So those I'm not giving away. I am selling those, but if you wanted that as well, living in the present moment about Jewish life and living and how it really helps cultivate being a happy person, let me know, because I have some of those at home. I have a bunch of those at home at my house. So that's my introduction. So I just wanted to let you know all about it, and I'll be sharing more information as we get closer. So we have a lot of things going on. First of all, Chodesh Tov. Today is Rosh Chodesh Iyar. I was to have been in Israel, or at least I thought I was to have been in Israel, but clearly I am not. The women's trip was to have left on Sunday, but we are rescheduled for October, thank God. So we have always planned the trip in the past has been during the month of Iyar, so that we land in Israel on Rosh Chodesh Iyar. And one of the beautiful things about the month of Iyar is that it is associated with the concept of healing. The spelling of Iyar is spelled Aleph Yud Yud Resh. Aleph Yud Yud Resh. It's not an exact fit, but our sages connected to the phrase from Shemot, from Exodus, where it says, Ani Hashem, God's name spelled Yud He Vav He, Rofecha. So the Aleph of Ani, the Yud from God's name, and sometimes you'll see, like in a prayer book, that God's name is written as two Yuds. just like instead of writing out the full name, Aleph, Yud, Yud, Resh. Ani Hashem Rofecha. I am God, your healer. And this is what was said to the Jewish people after they left Egypt. So it's so interesting to think about a month that is associated with healing. I can't think of a better, more timely, as I wrote in our Rise newsletter, a more timely thing for us than to have a month that is dedicated to healing. Specifically, it's around stomach ailments. That is, it says that it's primarily supposed to be a time of having your stomach feel better, but it's understood as healing in general. And when we think about healing, it's also connected to where we are in the Sfirat HaOmer, the counting of the Omer. So in the counting of the Omer, we are in the week of Tiferet. Now, Tiferet is a beautiful, beautiful, is a beautiful sphera. It means harmony, beauty, and balance. And if we think about what sickness is, it's something that's out of balance. I mean, even when we think about what causes the primary complications of COVID, it's an overreaction of the immune system that starts the whole, I think called cytokine storm or something that happens that your body is, it's out of balance. So the whole idea of being ill and having sickness is about being out of balance. So you can have a sick society, you can have a sick relationship, you can have a sick life, you can have a lot of things that are not necessarily medical sicknesses, but indicate there's something wrong. There is something out of balance. So the month of ER always starts during the week of Tiferet. It always starts in the month of balance and harmony. And if we think about like what's going on in our lives, like, you know, the economy, our society, family relationship, friends, communities, everybody is off. You know, it's like everyone is frazzled. And if we think we aren't frazzled, trust me, there are other people who think that we are. So it was like, I'm fine. It's just the rest of the world. It's like, maybe not so quickly. Maybe that we're all suffering and we are all out of balance. Someone was saying this morning, it's like we almost have to relearn our manners. It's like we've all been by ourselves and in our little bubbles. It's like we forgot how to relate to each other. You know, it's like we, you know, it's like we've been in confinement, solitary confinement practically, and we need to regroup. So this is the week of Tiferet about harmony, balance, and beauty for the month of ER, which is the month of healing, and that's what we're really trying to do. And then we have on top of it, we have this week's parsha, which is a double parsha of Tazria Mitzorah. I say this every year just because I think it's funny, but it's also true. When I taught bar and bat mitzvah students, the parents would always say, I hope they don't have the one that's about the leprosy, because that's what this is. And I'm like, well, that would be this week. So this is the leprosy parsha, except it's not leprosy, as we know, that what it is was a physical manifestation of a spiritual illness. So it's interesting that we have the month, and today's Rosh Chodesh, the first of the month of ER, about health. We have it during the sphere account of Tiferet, which is about restoring balance and harmony. And we have the parsha that is also about a spiritual well-being and what happens when that's off, what are the causes of it, and more importantly, how do we rectify it? So that's what we want to talk about today, is how do we work on restoring balance, and how does it get off, and how do we get it back on? And what are some of the things for us to be careful about, and some things that will help, especially in our interpersonal relationships. Are there any questions before we start and go ahead with that? I'm happy to take, otherwise we'll go ahead. All right. Yes, Etta.
Just a comment that when we're sick, we are diseased.
Very good.
We're not comfortable.
We're not comfortable, exactly. And usually our body gives us some sign that if something's wrong, you know, we have a fever, or, we're sweating, or we have the chills, or our stomach is upset, or something's hurt, and normal processes are not functioning in their normal place of harmony. That's exactly right. That's exactly right. So we're trying to get to a place of like, how do we get to a place of back to an equilibrium? So the other thing that's interesting in the mystical tree of life, which is where these sefirot come from, the first week we had the quality of chesed, which is like on one side of the mystical tree. The second week was gevura, which is about restraint and self-control and discipline. And then tiferet sits right in the center between those two. So it's on the central axis of the mystical tree of life, which is basically even its physical position is demonstrating what it is, which is it is a place of the center of holding things together. This does not mean neutral. It has more to do, if you want to use whatever language this is, thesis, antithesis, synthesis. It has a way of how do we bring this together, which is not always a 50-50 thing. Synthesis does not necessarily mean 50% this, 50% that. In some situations, it could be 10% this and 90% that. That's the appropriate synthesis. Today's specific is on the quality of gevura, of restraint within harmony, beauty, and balance. That there needs to be a structure around that. It's not a free-for-all. It's not just like, oh, let's just all get along. It's like, that's not how you get along. You get along by having people exercise restraint so that they can get along, to find a place of where there's self-control so you can come together. So gevura, which seems antithetical to harmony, balance, and peace and all that, is essential ingredient in the quality of tiferet. Okay. All right, so let's jump in and take a look at some ideas, and these come from Rabbi Zelig Pliskin, who I'm such a big fan of here. And the first one that I want to talk about is, it says, I'm sorry, I'm on the wrong page here, is Tazria and Mitzora talk about primarily these skin afflictions, which again are not leprosy, that have to do with a response to spiritual problems. The main problem being speaking lashon hara, of saying negative, true things about other people, and how this works. So the general idea, it says, to learn from Aaron to make peace between people, even at the price of distorting the truth. So this is very interesting because we all think that we put a big value on truth. And there's some things that have more value than truth, which is peace. So Aaron is the person who would say things that weren't exactly true in order to bring people together. Now, there is a time for truth and there's a time for not necessarily saying things that are totally truthful. One of the reasons people sometimes excuse themselves in speaking lashon hara is by saying, well, it's true, and I just tell it like it is, and that's the truth, and I'm going to tell it in like, too bad. That attitude says that is not a good attitude. That approach ruins relationships, ruins communities, ruins families, ruins everything. It says we don't do that. It says we're supposed to be like Aaron and pursue peace, even at the expense of some factual accuracy. So probably most of you have heard the stories about Aaron, where it said that two people who were fighting with each other, he would tell each side that the other side was saying positive things about them. And that when they got together, that they would, when you hear somebody said something really nice about you, it's a little hard to stay as worked up. So you know what? So-and-so, they just said you are the most lovely person, that they just always enjoy seeing you and being with you. They're like, really? It's like, okay, well, obviously they're a smart person to have come to that conclusion. So maybe I was wrong about them. Maybe there's something else here for me to consider. So this is what Aaron did. And that we should even have what's called a fund for shalom, a fund for peace, that sometimes money is involved in making peace. And that just like we spend money for, Jewish education, we spend money on a $60 kosher brisket, we spend money on a lulav and etrog, we spend money on all these different things in order to live our Jewish lives, that there should be a shalom fund, because some things, it could be over, It could be two people go out for lunch and they start having hostile feelings about how they split the ticket. You know, in the olden days when we would go out to lunch with each other, it's like, but you had a glass of wine and I just had water. And so like, why are we, even though we both had a salad and then you also ordered dessert? It's like, yes, just split it. Just pay for it. Now, if this is an ongoing challenge with the relationship, maybe you want to order ahead and pay and work out something else. But in the moment, it says just pay for it and don't make a big deal over it. For those who have in-laws, especially the parents of your grown children, and you have other people, this becomes an issue where things rear their heads again. So I can tell you like that, you know, our daughter-in-law's family lives in New York. So when we pay for them to come to Denver in the summer, they always stop in New York, you know, to obviously to see her family for like a day or maybe, you know, whatever amount of time. And then they come ahead to Denver and we pay for the tickets. So early on with the first thing was like, we are not going to say, well, you know, out of the 3 weeks, you had them for, you know, 50 hours. And so really you should pay for this amount of the ticket because you got them also. It's like not fair. It's like, we're not even having that conversation. We're not having any conversations like that. Or when it was the wedding or it was whatever it is. So it's like, these are not things, it's like it ruins relationships. And these relationships can get ruined really quickly with really long lasting implications. Anybody have a comment or a personal experience in that realm? So, and then if somebody, yes, Etta.
There, you know, there was a time when I was reading one of Rabbi Pliskin's books when I was just starting to get more observant in California. And I was able to do what he says between two neighbors, both Israelis who lived on the same cul-de-sac and just had this huge fight. And I actually did it. I went to each one and said, oh, you know, this person thinks you're terrific. And they went, what? We had this huge fight. And I said, really? I had no idea. They just was saying what wonderful people you are. And it worked like a charm. I could not believe it. They ended up going out to dinner, having a good time, and the fight was gone. And I thought, what a liar. But
no, that's the ultimate truth because peace is truth. Mazel tov. Mazel tov on that. That's amazing. And being able to make peace, and especially to make peace for ourselves, never mind even other people, but to keep something from turning into a machloket, you know, it's huge because it's like, these are long-term and in the moment, it can seem like very, very important and it's not, because in the long term, what's most important is that the relationship. My Rabbi Tursky, related to Rabbi Dr. Tursky of blessed memory, when he was counseling people and marriages would break up or whatever, I said to him, like, kind of like, what causes marriages to break up, especially like of young people, both, you know, they should have been just fine. And he said, they go to bed with 6 people in their bed. And that's the problem. And I'm like, what does that mean? Is it because it's not just the couple, it's her parents and his parents. And all 6 of them are in bed together. And so every issue, if it turns it into his parents and want this and how come they're doing that, it's like it causes so much pressure and so much strife for the couple that it really stresses them and it makes it very hard for them. Now, obviously people have survived that kind of scenario, but like, would you really want to be the cause of this breakup? So it's like, we need to, and then it's only in Hebrew, only the Jewish people have a name for the relationship between the in-laws. Okay, nobody else has that. Everyone else, you say, my daughter-in-law's parents. But we have a machatanam, a machutan, and a machatanista. That's the fathers-in-law and the mothers-in-law. And they have a relationship, and that's from the word chatuna, from choten, from the marriage. They are related by marriage. And that is a name and that is a relationship that needs to be protected for the sake of their children. Talk about doing something for the sake of the children. For the sake of the children, that relationship needs to be worked on. And these little things, of these squabbles, can erupt because, I remember even just growing up in Denver, I was very fortunate to have our kids, when growing up in Denver, our kids had both sets of grandparents living in Denver. So the question is, whose house are you going to for Rosh Hashanah? First day, second day, the Seders, etc. What about Thanksgiving? What about, I don't know, Hanukkah? All these different things were negotiated very carefully so that nobody felt, slighted, because these things are really important and people's feelings get hurt very easily. And to be able to be the giver in, or the giving in one, as a thing, not to be walked all over. We're not talking about that. We're talking about just to be soft in this area is really huge. So Aaron was this kind of person, because when these squabbles happen, it's not just about the issue. Then it becomes saying negative things about them. Well, those New Yorkers or those Denverites or those whoever or those Israelis or whatever it is, then we turn into character assassination along with whatever the issue is. It turns into a whole thing which just invites more and more lashon hara. So these are the things that we are supposed to stay away from. How much so? To the point of Aaron. So Aaron, the priest, they were the antidote to speaking lashon hara, because the people who speak lashon hara are overly concerned with their righteous truth telling. And Aaron comes to say, you're barking up the wrong tree. Your whole way of thinking about this is incorrect. It's not about how factually accurate, and you're destroying relationships and you're destroying people. So that's the rehabilitation was there. If this was really just a skin disease, Jews are very big on going to the doctor. Even the Torah says that if you damage somebody and you cause them physical harm, you have to pay for their doctors and their medical care. So nobody was confused about Sarat if it was a medical problem or a spiritual problem. If it was a medical problem, you go to the doctor. If it's a spiritual problem, you go to the Kohen. You go to the people who love peace, seek peace, love peace, and will do whatever they can to preserve peace. It's really so beautiful. So there's a story here. I'll just share this with you. This was about a widow who lived in a rented apartment in Bnei Brak. A quarrel arose between her and the owner of the apartment over an amount of 50 liras, which in those days was a very large sum of money. The widow claimed she didn't owe the money and refused to pay. The owner of the apartment took her to a secular court, which ruled that she had to leave the apartment. The English policeman, the British policeman, forced the widow out and threw her furniture on the street. Some hot-headed people felt sorry for the widow and were ready to beat up the owner of the apartment. But just in time, someone came up with this suggestion that they should consult the Chazon Ish, who was the great person of that generation. Both parties agreed to discuss the matter and to follow his directives. The people who accompanied the widow were furious at the owner, and they could not conceal their anger. The owner then gave his version of the situation. He claimed that she did owe him the money and he had no choice but to act the way he did. To the surprise of those standing there, the Chazon Ish's response to the owner was, "You are right." The owner was right. "You're right." Those who came with the widow were silent, even though they were flabbergasted. Then the Chazon Ish called over each of the sides separately and convinced them to give in a little bit in order to work out a compromise. He said that he would hold the money the widow would give him for the owner and would hand it over to him as soon as the widow moved back into the apartment. He did this because he convinced the widow to pay 15 liras out of the 50, and she thought the owner was willing to give up 35. So she thinks, I'm only have to pay 15, I really owe 50. He's willing to give up 35, okay, I'll do it. The Chazon Ish had the owner agree to accept 40 liras, which the owner thought the widow was going to be paying, so that he was only giving up 10. Meanwhile, the Chazon Ish, who only himself had 5 liras, borrowed 20, which he would pay back little by little. Neither the owner nor the widow realized that the Chazon Ish was paying the money himself. So the Chazon Ish paid it so that everyone could be restored. But after the owner and the widow left, the Chazon Ish called over those who came with the widow and explained why he appeared to agree with the owner. The owner has a weak heart, and if his integrity would have been questioned, it might have killed him. I was forced to sound as if I agreed with him. Even though he acted improperly, we must still save his life. So his concern was over everyone, which is another aspect of this peacekeeping is taking so much of the picture into consideration, not just this is right, this is wrong. It's like, this is right, this is kind of wrong, but if we say this is wrong in this scenario, this is going to cause a worse problem. And would the widow really want the man to die because he, was told that he was wrong? It's like, that's not the punishment for being wrong, is not death. So having all these things in mind of like, what are the ramifications of the words we speak and of the combustion that happens? So it's like one of the things we know about fire, which is what anger is compared to, is it's usually not so easily controlled or contained. And fire tends to burn everything in its path and only get worse as long as there's oxygen to feed it. So this idea of putting down anger and putting down machlokas and restoring harmony and peace is considered essential. And that's why Aaron and the Kohanim were the ones to do that. So we can be like Etta and we can do that. We can have a fund for money. Say it's coming from the Shalom Fund. I don't even have to consider it. It's, it's my Shalom Fund. I'm just paying for all these little things. Don't worry about it. Think long term. What's the real gain? What's the real pain in all of these situations? Okay, here's one I think we can all really appreciate. So a person who had Tzara'at, all the days that they had it, they had to dwell alone outside of the camp. In other words, they were in solitary confinement. Why? It's like, were we really concerned about contagiousness? It's like, no, it wasn't contagion. This was not something you could catch from somebody else because it was not bacterial or viral or anything like that. It's like, that was the punishment. The punishment is the things that you're saying are causing people to separate from each other. And the consequence then is for you to experience that same separation, an ultimate timeout. And that was supposed to be rehabilitative to help the person have some time to think. So the lesson is very funny, I think. It says, view the irritations caused by other people as the price you pay for companionship. Okay? A lot of people spent a lot of time by themselves this past year. And I don't know, you start thinking about those people who are maybe like just bothering you so much in January of 2020, and maybe you haven't even seen them for a year. And then you start thinking like, what was it that was really so annoying about them? I kind of don't really exactly remember. It's like people who don't remember what the feud was all about. It's like, if you really don't want to be with anybody annoying, we probably wouldn't even be able to be with ourselves. I mean, I know I find myself annoying to me all the time. It's like, oh, it's so annoying. So if I'm annoying to myself, the chances are probably really good I'm annoying somebody else. And it's like, we're all so different. It's amazing we can get along at all and accomplish anything. It says, but that's the price we pay for having companionship. It's like, okay, fine. It's like why there's always the drama in the magazines about how to deal with your family on the holidays, for the secular world or the non-Jewish world, Christmas and Thanksgiving. Like, how are you going to put up with great Uncle Bill's, comments about the blah, 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 and Aunt whatever's mushy kisses that just make you sick. I mean, all these things are like, but this is your family. And so it's like, okay. And some people really weigh this out. They're like, I don't think I can take it. But I think people are feeling a little differently now in their calculations. It's like, well, after some forced time apart, maybe I can put up with him. Maybe I can put up with her, because it really would be nice to have everybody be together. That's more important. So it doesn't necessarily mean that we don't say anything at some point to any of these people, but it changes our perspective on how we see them. It's like, this is the price we pay for having companionship. That's just what it is, because nobody is going to be so amazing all the time. It's just not going to happen. Our kids in Israel, so those who've been with me on the women's trip when we've gone to Shalavim, which is where our son and daughter-in-law and family live, it's a small kind of isolated community. I mean, they're near another city called Modi'in, but it's an isolated community basically. And I remember our daughter-in-law saying, when they moved there, they made a conscious decision that they were going to get along with the people who lived there. There weren't that many families. And if you're in a small area and there aren't that many families, you kind of have a choice. We're going to get along, or you're going to find yourself being aggravated, annoyed, and stop speaking to all sorts of people. And pretty soon you're going to have nobody because everyone's going to do something annoying. So yes, there are, of course, some people who are more annoying than others. It's like, fine. Okay, like, so what? So what? They're part of our community. And that when we can understand, it's like, I get so much from the fact that we have a community and there are people there who are there to help out or to talk, even just to talk to say hello to in the store, to have their kids come play with my kids. All of these things is like, because there's a community. It's like, okay, so people are annoying. So I find this really funny and good, because being annoying is not like a new problem. And the underlying assumption is that that's the human condition. So part of what we get so upset about when people are annoying us is that we don't think that anybody should be annoying us. It's like somehow we think that we are entitled to other people who follow our script and how we want things to be said, how we want things to be done, how we want people to behave. It's like, says who? Says who? It's like, that's not how it works. So in order to be in a community means, and I won't even say tolerating, I would say almost embracing the idea that there's going to be things that are annoying, and that's just the way it is. It's like the price you pay for playing a game is that your uniform gets dirty. I mean, it's like, where you say, well, I'm only going to play if I stay clean. It's like, it's not how it works. So life is messier and relationships are messy, and they have like these things. And the more kind of soft and flexible we can be on the outside so that we're not so upset about all of this, is the same thing as the Shalom Fund. It's like just cushion it. And part of it is the expectation of what I think relationships should really be. Anybody remember their first time or when you were young and realized that people do things differently than you do? Different than your family, different than you, and you're like, why are they doing that? That's so annoying. Anybody? Okay, I'm assuming everybody has. I hope I'm not the only person. Okay.
Thank you for your thoughts. It's fantastic.
It's so funny. I mean, you have to laugh. I mean, being a person is really just like a pretty funny thing. It's like, God, seriously, what were you thinking about? You know, the cows in the field, they all basically eat the grass the same way. They don't sit there and like have a meeting to discuss like, well, how are we going to graze in this field? It's like, I'm grazing, like, why I do like what I'm programmed to do. There's no, I'm not saying there's no individuality. I'm sure there's individual personalities within the cows, like there is in the rest of the animal world, but not to the point where like I can no longer be with these cows because the way they eat grass, you see them, they're like this, like makes me crazy. It's like, because they're doing it too. It's like, they're all doing it the same. It's people who do every single thing in their own unique way, which is because we were created in the image of God and we are unique. So on one hand, we're so happy that we're unique, but do we realize that by definition means that we're going to come into conflict with somebody else who was also created unique? It really can't, you can't have it. The only other option is to be carbon copies. That's the only other option. Then you would not have any problems because everybody would be behaving and doing things exactly like you. And we think, and what's the music? If only a woman could be more like a man. If only everybody could just be more like me. I mean, again, I don't think that would be so exciting, but sometimes we act like that. So I just give you like the tiniest example. It was like it was on Shabbos. Some friends invited us over for a kiddush at their house after davening. And we were going to be eating outside. There's just going to be like 15 of us, like all together outside. And the hosts had gotten some flour tortillas and some corned beef. And they took out like a bottle of like sriracha and some mustard. And they said, so we're just going to make some like roll-ups, some corned beef roll-ups, and then we'll cut them in thirds and then we'll serve that for the kiddush. I'm like, that's great. So there was one other woman who's a good friend of mine. She and I were in charge of this. And I started doing it. And she's like, why are you putting on so much of, whatever the sriracha? It's too spicy. I'm like, well, she said it really wasn't so spicy because I'm sensitive to spice too. It's really not. She goes, oh, I think that you're putting on too much. And I'm like, all right. So I put on less and put on a little bit mustard. And then I started putting on the corn because why are you putting on so many pieces? We're not going to really have enough. I said, well, I think we will. Like, no, we're not. So I'm like, my goodness, this project involved exactly 3 ingredients and 2 people for something that was not even earth shattering. So now in this scenario, we each did our 3 tortillas the way we wanted to do it. She did hers her way and I did mine my way because it didn't really make a difference because we were rolling them up and cutting them in thirds. And guess what? Nobody said anything about any of it. They probably thought both of them were terrible. I have no idea. It was totally fine. But I mean, this could have been like, what if we were like caterers and someone's like, no, it all has to be uniform. So we have to decide how it's going to be. We can't have some that have like 4 pieces of meat and some that have 9. That's like not right. So then we could have had a fight about this, right? So
it's like the tuna fish sandwich or the tuna salad that you were making.
exactly. And I mean, and that was, that was more people with more ingredients and higher stakes. But I'm like, gosh, it's so stupid. But it's like, this is how everything is. This is how everything is. So when we have this in mind, instead of being shocked and chagrined that there are people out here are like so annoyingly different than we are, our question might be like, oh, I wonder how they are different. What makes them different? In what way are they different? How would they want to do it? To ask that question instead of just assuming like, well, how else would you make this? Because I have to say, my honest opinion was like, well, how else would you do this? You take the meat, you divide it by whatever, and you put it on and you roll it up. It's like, what's the question? So I didn't even think there was a question. So that's part of our challenge, is that we don't even think there is a question. We just are then upset that somebody has a different way of doing it. So then you throw in, I don't know, if this would have been a rank thing, or if this would have been a mother-in-law, daughter-in-law thing, or a employer-employee thing, there's all sorts of other things that then complicate this scenario that could have made it into much higher stakes. But that's just how it is, that people are just so different. It's so funny. It's so funny. Anyway, okay, so that's, we want to have an understanding of that. To help us with that, one of the things that we are told to do in the Torah, which is so beautiful, really so beautiful. There's a script in the Torah. There's a script. If someone has, so just to back up a second, that Tzara'at could appear in 3 different places. It could appear first on your home, like on the walls of your house. If you didn't get the message, then it could go onto your clothing, and then it would go onto your actual skin. So at the early stage, or really at any of the stages, but specifically it talks about at the early stage, hear what the person has to say. It says, and he that owns the house, who has a tzara'at maybe, shall come and tell the priest, saying, and this is the quote, it seems to me as if there is a plague in the house. It seems to me as if there is a plague in the house. The person had to say that, whether or not they were a brilliant Torah scholar who was absolutely certain that what they saw was what they thought they saw, or the most ignorant person who didn't have a clue. Everyone had to say the same thing, which is, it appears to me as if it is Tzara'at. Now, there's a whole movement, especially among looking at women and women entrepreneurs, women business people, criticizing women for weak speech, of using exactly this kind of wording. Well, it appears to me, or I think, that you're supposed to come in and say, the answer to this question is blah, blah, blah. And we're supposed to be definitive and assertive and blah, blah, blah. It says, maybe that works in a business environment, maybe it doesn't. But from the Torah's perspective, that's not how relationships work. And that's not something to cultivate. Cultivating is humility, is what we are supposed to be cultivating. And when we say something like, it seems to me, in my opinion, from where I stand, from my experience, the way I see it, all of those words is, what do those words do? Those words do a number of things that are very strategic. They help, number one, put us in the place of being somewhat tentative, not that we're tentative people, but making a tentative statement, prognosis, whatever it is. Once we say something with a lot of firmness, it becomes very difficult to back away, because then we become invested in what we said. So that if somebody has information to show that maybe we are incorrect, we may hold our ground simply because I already kind of staked my place of being here. If I come forward with a little bit more tentative, open to others, it allows me to be able to modify my position. And since many times we are wrong about things, or we don't have complete information, or we just haven't considered all of the different options or all of the different anything, we don't know, even though we act like we're omniscient, we don't know. So to say that it seems to me as if it is this creates space for me to be open. It also allows other people to come close to me and to agree with me. Because some people just have what's called like, Dafka oppositional disorder. It's like you say one thing, and just because you said it strongly, they're going to disagree just because. That when we come forward with something that is not stated in that way, it actually allows them to step into our space and share it with us. So the person was supposed to cultivate this, and that this humility also was in answer to, like, how did they get the tzara to begin with again? From speaking Lashon Hara, saying negative, true things about other people. And maybe what they said is probably not the whole picture. They acted as an authority on this person by saying this negative thing about them that was true. But did they say the rest of the picture? Did they open up for the fact that they could be wrong, that they misunderstood, they misheard anything? It says the person who speaks Lashon Hara is lacking that basic humility in how you approach anything. Our information is always incomplete, always incomplete. And so to step forward and say, it seems to me as if there is a plague on this house, that approach is the way that we enter into a conversation where people can have different opinions, but it also allows different opinions to coexist. Because it may be so someone says, well, from where I'm sitting, I see it like this. So we have the word in Hebrew, a machloket. Machlokas is like arguments and fights and disputes. But the Talmud is full of machlokas. That's what it is. So what makes a good machloket and what makes a bad machloket? So first of all, a bad machloket is when it's for your honor instead of for the sake of God, for the sake of truth, for the sake of it says like l'shem shamayim, for the sake of heaven. When it's like, no, it's me, myself, and I. We all decided, the three of us, that I was right. But that's a machloket where I'm taking up all of the space. So the word machloket comes from the Hebrew word chelek. Chelek means a portion. It's very different to say, I have a portion of the perspective. I might even think that I have 98% of the portion that's true. But that still leaves the possibility that 2% I'm wrong. By saying from my perspective, my machloket, my chelek, this is my chelek. By definition, it's like having a pizza pie cut into 8 portions. What's yours? What's your perspective? Not as a counter to truth, but what's another piece of this? So, it's like the joke of like people describing the elephant. No, it has, like whatever the tusks, and that's what they feel. And the other person, like, no, it has like these heavy legs. Like, no, it's like these floppy ears. It's like, you're all talking about a different part of it. And our perception and our perspective, by definition of being human, is limited. When we have a limited perspective, and we know that, we can more fully and honestly come forward and say, it seems to me as if there is a plague. It seems to me from where I sit that this is the best answer to this problem. It seems to me from how I understand it in my experience that this would be the best answer to this situation. That kind of talking, a person can be very assertive. You don't have to, it doesn't mean like, well, it seems to me. It doesn't have to be that. someone can, with assertiveness, can say, well, it seems to me from my perspective that this is the way that it should be done. What do you see from your perspective? That is an assertive, affirming, and making space for other people conversation. It says this is what the person has to learn. So the therapy for the person who may have this tzara'at, it's like the therapy begins from the moment they open their mouth to go to the Kohen to find out if in fact they do have it. And the chances are probably they do. It's like, okay, we're going to start the therapy of how you address this lacking in yourself by giving you a speech that you have to say, and you need to say these words and internalize them. So we have to practice that. We're supposed to practice saying, I don't know. We're supposed to practice saying, let me find out. I will get back to you. We're supposed to practice. It says, so the less that we make kind of ultimatum comments and things like that, the less we have to like then pull ourselves out when we find out that maybe we didn't have the whole story, maybe we were wrong, maybe there's additional information, maybe there's another perspective, maybe there's another idea, and maybe I just overreacted. You know, a whole lot of things can come in there. In our world, where everything seems to be a machlokas, I'm telling you, if you go on and look at the reviews for, I don't know, cream cheese, you'll find people degenerating into name calling over like, how could you say blah, 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 you know, that, you know, whatever it is, it's like, it seems like it'd be an instantaneous that any other perspective is an automatic attack. And instead of, which is how it will be perceived if somebody claims the entire space. So by definition, if I claim the whole pizza, by definition, anybody else saying that they have a part of it is going to be a problem. When I say, these are my slices, this is how I see it, that's an invitation to come to the party to say, what are your slices? And that is a different perspective to be working with. We should definitely try at home. This is something to try at home. Okay, so we're supposed to get in that habit to do that. Yeah. And of course, we all know that anytime we say statements that are me statements instead of you, you're wrong statements, I've never really ever seen anybody turn around from being attacked like that. Say, well, the thing is you're wrong, or you're an idiot, or you're ignorant, or you're whatever people are flinging at each other about every topic. You know, it can be about elections, it can be about the vaccine, it can be about COVID, it can be about schools, it can be about shuls, it can be about family, it can be about, you name the topic, it can be about how you are supposed to wrap corned beef in a tortilla. Okay, so it doesn't take anything to get us started and to get us on the wrong track. So when we have these things in mind and we're prepared and our mouth is trained to say certain things, it becomes like anything. Yes, so we're supposed to be listening to other people and hearing what they have to say, and it doesn't mean not saying what we think. We are absolutely supposed to say what we think in a way that others can hear. In fact, we're even told that in some cases we don't necessarily offer our opinion or our perspective if we know that it'll be counterproductive. And yet there are some times when we're obligated to offer our perspective, even if we know that nobody will listen because it's an obligation. Sometimes we think that that's all the time, but it's not necessarily all the time. There's something called staying quiet. There's also something about being quiet and just listening. And who knows, you might find out some information that you never knew before. You could find out some new information. So I love these parshas and the convergence, again, going back to how we started, of having Rosh Chodesh Iyar. First of all, that it's a Rosh Chodesh and a new beginning anyway is beautiful. And that we have the connection to the holiday being one about healing, of moving from a place of dis-ease, as Etta said, to a place of harmony, balance, and comfort. What is it like in Easter Minute? All your chakras are aligned or whatever. We're doing the same thing with our sfirot. We're aligning everything. This is when a person is aligned, when all their bodily system is aligned, you feel good. You feel good. It's the most selfish thing in the world to do. Why should you be bothering with all of this? because you'll have a happier life. You will enjoy your life much more, and other people will enjoy you. So it's like, it's a win-win situation. So we have this Rosh Chodesh ER about health. We have the week of Tiferet about harmony and balance. We have the idea of Gevura about restraint and self-control, and that where that is needed in the equation of finding this harmony and balance, specifically this week with the parsha of Tazria and Mitzorah, which is talking about really exercising Gevura. Because when we talk about just taking up our slice of the pie, whatever that slice is, that's a Gevura thing. That is saying, like, my boundaries are here. This is my opinion about how I see it. That is a Gevura place to be. I create harmony when I identify and can exercise self-control and self-restraint over what I say, how I say it, how I make other people feel about saying what they want to say, all of it. So this is that place. So this is this beautiful, beautiful double parsha that we have to inspire us for this wonderful week of Tiferet, this wonderful month of ER. So I just want to wish everybody a beautiful Shabbos. And if you got to have this as your bar bat mitzvah parsha, obviously you didn't have it as your bar mitzvah parsha, or your child or somebody, you got a good one. Instead of the one like, oh, I haven't done that. It's like, this is probably one of the best ones, most helpful, useful, down to earth information and wisdom that we could possibly have. Any questions or thoughts or something come to mind at all? Yeah. Okay. Let me ask you another question, which is not related to anything other than my intention is to continue our Tuesday afternoon class on Zoom for the near future, that people aren't quite ready to meet in person. I know we have the privilege of having often people come from other cities. So I've gotten really used to this. So let me know what you think. It works really well. I mean, people have many different reasons for not being able to come out, wanting to go out, traveling, driving, whatever. So let's think about what we'd like to have happen. We're not doing anything, no crazy changes in the very, very near future, but just something to start thinking about. I'm not sure when, but just to have in mind. I love seeing all of you, even those of you who I only see your names. I love seeing your names. And there's Linda up here for us. So nice to see you. And I want to just wish you all a great, great week. And again, please email me if you're interested in any books or just books in general. I'm happy to talk to you about any specific titles that I have that you might be interested in. All right. Thank you so much and have a wonderful rest of your week.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My pleasure. Take care.
Thanks, Ellen. Have a good
My
week.
pleasure, Lisa. Take good care. Give my best to Sandy.
I will. You too. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Ellen.
My pleasure. Thanks, Allegra.